Here is the basic system itself, with the major components you require to begin using the Apple IIe in your work. Let's start with the computer, which is contained inside this sturdy cabinet. The computer is the heart of the system. It receives information from the outside world, manipulates that information according to the instructions you give it, and then sends out the manipulated information for you to use. The keyboard and monitor screen let you communicate with the computer. The keyboard resembles that of a normal typewriter, except for a few special keys which you will learn about later in this workshop. The keyboard is what you use to give information to the computer. The computer responds to you, so to speak, via the monitor, which can have a green and black screen, or one which produces 16 shades of colors. Depending on your system, the monitor will display text in 40 or 80 columns. And when you use the IIe at home, you can hook it up to a normal TV set with a special attachment. Another way to communicate with the computer is with a floppy or flexible disk like this. It's a thin, flat plastic disk with a magnetic recording surface. Disks can store instructions to the computer or other information on their surfaces. This information is organized in units on the disk called files. To get this information from the disk into the computer, you need a disk drive. The disk drive has a motor which rotates the disk while a read-write head takes information from or puts information back onto the disk. The Apple IIe is a powerful personal computer and can have up to 6 disk drives connected to it. This increases the amount of information instantly accessible to the computer. In many situations, you eventually want to get the information stored in the computer or on disks onto paper. For this, you need a printer, dot matrix for rough drafts or for graphs, impact printer for letter quality printing, and silent thermal printers for quiet, small quantity draft printing and graphs. If you need multicolored graphs or charts for your presentations, then you can attach a pen and ink plotter to the Apple IIe. One other important device frequently used with the Apple IIe is the modem. A modem lets you use the telephone system to communicate with a central computer, with international data banks or services, or to send and receive mail electronically. All of these devices that attach to the computer are called peripherals. They plug into the back panel or into slots on the inside, which we will see in a moment. Here is an Apple IIe system with all the parts connected to the computer. Impressive sight, isn't it? However, I believe you've seen the most important components, and now it's time for me to turn you back to your workshop leader. I'll be back shortly. Lights, please. I hope you found the brief labeling activity enjoyable. It gave you a chance to review the outside parts of the Apple IIe computer system. Now I would like to invite you inside the computer itself. All I have to do is snap open the cover. Ah, that's better. We now have a clear inside view. Let me point out some of the things you see. On your left is a rather large dominating box. That's the power supply. Tucked under the lower left corner of the cabinet is the speaker, which produces all sorts of interesting tones, like this. And right in front of us, down below, is the major part of the computer, all those plastic rectangles, or chips, plugged into the green board. Each chip is actually a package of thousands of electronic circuits etched onto thin wafers of silicon. The chips, connected together by traces, make up the computer. This particular one is the most important chip of all, the microprocessor, the true brains of the computer. Everything you do with the computer becomes an instruction to the microprocessor. Since the microprocessor only understands electrical impulses and you speak English, you have to communicate with it through programs, which are a series of instructions the microprocessor can deal with. Notice this group of chips here. They make up the random access memory, or RAM for short. RAM stores instructions from a program as well as other information before it is sent to the microprocessor. RAM is volatile. This means that when you turn the power off on the Apple IIe, everything stored in RAM disappears. Another thing to know about RAM is that its size determines the amount of information a program can manipulate quickly. The size of RAM is measured in kilobytes, or K for short. In the Apple IIe, RAM is 64K. Here is another important set of chips, read-only memory chips, or ROM for short. They are different from RAM chips because information stored in ROM is permanent. It is still there when the power is off. ROM contains, among other things, the special instructions which let the computer test itself. ROM also contains the code for the AppleSoft Basic Programming Language, which we'll talk about later. To conclude our inside tour, let's examine these long socket-like fixtures at the back. These are called slots. They allow you to expand your Apple IIe system by inserting special cards that add new capabilities to the computer or attach peripherals such as a printer. Up to 6 different cards can be plugged directly into the computer at any one time. There's another slot here. You can plug in a card which lets you display text in 80 columns. Now that we have toured the insides of the Apple IIe, I think it's time for you to get some hands-on experience with the system. Your workshop leader is going to guide you through an activity that will let you start up the computer and communicate with it. I'll be back as soon as you're all done. Some lights again, please. Here I am again one last time. It's been a pleasure sharing with you my knowledge of the Apple IIe computer system. During this brief time together, we've had a chance to talk a little about what the Apple IIe can do for you. We've also looked at the different parts of the system, outside and in, and you have had an opportunity to use the computer successfully. This experience, plus your booklet, is a beginning. A starting point for you and the Apple IIe system. Welcome to Part 2 of the Apple Horizons Workshop, Apple IIe, A Beginning. I'm Gilbert, your co-host. In this second part, we're going to focus our attention on major ways you can make the Apple IIe computer work for you. And incidentally, you will be pleasantly surprised to know you don't have to be a programmer to make it happen. Before I do this, however, let me refresh your memory for a moment. In Part 1 of the workshop, you were introduced to various Apple IIe pieces of equipment, such as the keyboard, monitor, disk drive, and so on. All these items, which you can actually touch and see, are called hardware. The programs that tell the computer what to do are called software. It is software that allows your Apple IIe to become a highly sophisticated report-generating machine at one moment, an efficient filing system at another, and a graphics creator at a third. The software programs that make this happen are known as applications programs. Applications programs are available for education, science, business, industry, and the home. This second part of the workshop will focus on business applications. Generally speaking, you can cluster business applications programs into the 5 major categories you see on the screen. Let's look at these one by one. Word processing programs let you type any kind of text into the computer and then make changes to it. You can insert, move, or delete single words or sentences, or even whole paragraphs. You can search and replace, which means automatically change a word or phrase to something else everywhere through the text. You can enter special formatting commands that let you control the appearance of your document when it's printed. Even after printing, if you want further changes, you can make your modifications and have the computer automatically print out your text again. You do not have to retype the whole document. Electronic spreadsheet programs replace calculator plus pencil plus eraser plus big paper spreadsheets plus tedious calculations. With an electronic spreadsheet program, you set up a model by defining all the rows and columns you need. You also type in the calculations that describe the relationships among figures. Once this is done, you enter your initial figures and the program calculates everything else in the model. This automatic calculation becomes extremely valuable when you decide to make changes in your model, perhaps factor in different inflation estimates or production quantities. A few keystrokes and the computer recalculates everything, prints it out, or stores it on disk. Business graphics application programs allow you to create visual representations like these of business data. Most programs let you include titles anywhere on the screen. If the computer is attached to a printer or plotter, you can have your graphics printed out. This is especially useful for presentations where you want to show spreadsheet results in picture form or summarize the information contained in bulky written reports. With a database management program, you can collect pieces of information and store them in an organized fashion. As an example, you can create an electronic index file or database with last names, first names, departments, hire dates, salary, and so on. Because the database you've created is electronic, you can manipulate it with the Apple IIe. Again, by way of example, you can sort your database by hire date or by last name, or search for a subcategory like all employees hired after a certain date. A communications program and a modem can turn an Apple IIe into a communications station. With these, you can talk to similarly equipped Apple IIes around the world. You can access mainframe computers, and you can buy into services such as Dow Jones News Retrieval to draw from their resources and databanks. That's a lot of capability in the Apple IIe through business applications programs. Now, from what I've just described, each application appears to be separate from the others. This is by and large true, but some applications programs can be made to work together to solve a specific problem. Let me illustrate by way of a personal anecdote that happened not too long ago in my company. The setting is an investment counseling service in the financial district of San Francisco, with a recently opened branch in Los Angeles. It's 10 a.m. Monday morning when news comes through of a new bond offering from a local utilities company. The offering is exceptionally attractive, and we decide that our clients and our Los Angeles office should get the details as quickly as possible. I myself have a lunch date with a major client who might be interested in the offering. Our office has a number of Apple IIes. Our chief financial planner sits down at his Apple IIe. Using Apple Writer, a word processing program, he prepares a document describing the new offering in detail. In a few minutes, the document is typed, formatted, perfectly printed out, and ready for study by one of our investment analysts. Her job is to examine the offering and build alternative models showing how investment in this bond could be affected by different interest rates a year hence. She selects VisiCalc, an extremely popular electronic spreadsheet program, to build her financial scenarios. She creates, stores, and prints out 3 versions of a VisiCalc model showing the impact of various interest rate moves on different levels of investment in the bond offering. Together with the document already prepared, the 3 what-if scenarios offer a clear, detailed picture to the prospective investor. In just a little over an hour since the news came in, I have the materials I need. But lunch is still 3/4 of an hour off. I turn to my Apple IIe, take out my business graphics program, and quickly produce a graph to illustrate the bond offering's future potential even more clearly. A few minutes later, I have a printed, vivid color graph, fresh from my plotter, summarizing the main advantages of investment in this particular bond. I saved time because I didn't have to retype the figures from the VisiCalc models. The business graphics software was able to use the information directly from the VisiCalc data disk to create the graph. In computer terms, the applications programs are integrated. VisiCalc, Business Graphics, and Apple Writer are all integrated software. 11:40 a.m. and the 3 key items, document, models, and graphics, are all ready. Before I leave the office, I turn my Apple IIe into a communications terminal with a program called Microcourier and transmit to our Los Angeles office all the information from our data disks so that they too can have the same materials as I do. All of our counselors in San Francisco and Los Angeles keep personal data files on their clients using a database management program called QuickFile. With the bond offering materials in hand, each counselor can scan his clients and select appropriate prospects for this type of investment. Well, there it is. In something like 2 hours, we had used programs with our Apple IIes in all 5 application areas. We were able to respond rapidly and efficiently to new information. And in the competitive field of investment counseling, that's critical. Incidentally, the clear presentation and materials I was able to offer over lunch that day were extremely helpful to my client and to me. So much for my experience. Now it's time for you to begin acquiring some of yours. Your workshop leader has prepared a practical and informative computer applications experience for you. I'll be back when you've finished it. That was quite a pair of activities. As you can see, applications programs are very useful to your needs. You no doubt also noticed that when you tried the programs, each one acted somewhat differently from the other. In business graphics, for example, you typed in a word or two to tell the program what to do. With VisiCalc, you only pressed single keys. Programs do vary. This is because programmers use different approaches. You will learn various user interfaces as you read the manuals and gain experience with the Apple IIe. You should also be aware that when we talk about software, besides applications programs, we also may be speaking of system software. These are programs that perform general tasks inside the computer. On Apple IIe's, one important piece of system software is DOS, short for Disk Operating System. DOS allows the computer to use the disk drives. In Module 2 of this workshop, we have been concerned with applications software. In Module 3, you will have a chance to trace, step by step, the interactions that occur between software and hardware. Hi, we're now into the third part of the Apple Horizons workshop, Apple IIe, A Beginning. Part 1 introduced you to the Apple IIe hardware. Part 2 dealt with software, particularly business application software. In this concluding section of the workshop, we're going to see how hardware and software work together when you use an applications program. By learning about what goes on inside the computer when you use it, you should be able to respond more efficiently. Here are 4 important operations you frequently have to perform when you use an applications program. Please watch closely as I discuss them. In a while, you'll do the same things. I'm going to return with you to my company and the story of the utility bond offering. Imagine that you work here with me. It's after lunch and you've just come back to the office with a firm purchase commitment from a client. You want to update your information on the client using the Quick File program. Let's see what you do. First, you ensure that you have 2 disks, the Quick File program disk and the data disk containing information on your clients. You insert the program disk in drive 1. Then close the door and turn on the TV monitor. Now insert your data disk in drive 2 and close its door. You reach around back and flip on the power switch of your Apple IIe. The red light of the disk drive goes on and you hear this. Here's what's happening inside. The disk drive has a read-write head similar to the recording head of a tape recorder. It also has a motor to rotate the floppy disk inside its protective cover. The read-write head is positioned over the oval-shaped cutout in the disk's cover so that as the disk turns, it reads off the magnetic code that makes up the Quick File program. This is sent to RAM. When the whirring stops and the light goes out, the first operation is complete. The program is transferred into the random access memory of the computer. Notice what is on the screen. The program has given you a list of files you previously created on the disk in drive 2. You can load a copy of the information in any of these files into RAM. You select the file containing client information. Inside, the Quick File program takes a copy of all the information in your client file and loads it into RAM. The second operation is complete. The program also displays on the screen as much of the client information in RAM as it can. Now, to update the information on your client, you move the cursor to the appropriate place in the list of clients. You add the new information and then do a final check of your client list. The third operation is finished. What you have done is to change the information in the computer's volatile RAM memory. Since you want to make the change permanent, you'll have to store the updated information in RAM back onto the data disk in Drive 2. You request a display of the Save File menu on the screen. Then select the first option. The program sends the newly modified information in RAM to Disk Drive 2, where the read-write head records or writes it onto the disk as a new file. The old version of the client file is automatically deleted. With this operation, you have completed your task. The new information is permanently recorded on disk. Let's leave my offices and return to the workshop. Your workshop leader is going to have you participate in an activity similar to the one we've just seen. You'll work with QuickFile and go through the same 4 steps we saw. Enjoy yourselves and think about what is happening inside the Apple IIe as you proceed. Lights, please. Congratulations on completing the computer activity. As you gain experience in using your Apple IIe, you'll find that after you have created information, you'll be repeating these 4 basic steps, with some variations, for just about all the applications programs you use. Whether it's word processing, electronic spreadsheets, business graphics, database management, or communications software, you'll still have to boot the system and load the program, create information or load existing information into RAM, change it, and then save your work back on disk. And this is true not only for application software you purchase, but also for those specialized programs you or your company may later ask programmers to tailor-make for you. So there it is. This workshop is drawing to a close. In these audiovisual presentations, I've tried to share with you my experience in using the Apple IIe computer system. If you think about it, in our short time together, you have learned to recognize the different hardware components of the Apple IIe system and use some of them. You've tried out some application software, examining it in terms of your own needs. And you've observed hardware and software working together as you've traveled through the system. You've made a good beginning toward effectively using the Apple IIe. Let me turn you back to your workshop leader with my very best wishes.